he showed me that because he has put me on a mission, I can have fear, but I can still act on the things that he places in my heart to do because it's for his purpose. I am
Hmm.
serving out his purpose. And again, there's something bigger at play here, and I'm just doing what he wants me to do. And it's really challenging me to go out of my comfort zone and push myself outside of my boundaries, because the boundaries that I have, those are boundaries I've placed upon myself.
Hey, what's going on? It's Matthew, and welcome to Henosis. If you enjoy self development content and you enjoy listening to podcasts or even watching it, then do me a huge favor, subscribe to this channel, comment below any questions or your favorite parts from the episodes or any video that we upload on here. I really appreciate you for being here. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy.
Right.
But yeah, let's talk about your background. What's going on back there?
The background, it's so funny. Okay, wait, are we on? Are we going?
We're on.
Sorry. All right. The background, it's so funny. Okay, so 2 years ago, I left an 8-year relationship, and it was like I wasn't planning on it. It just a lot of things happened, and I just had to go. And my best friend from high school of like over 10 years, she just happened to have an extra bedroom, and she was like, move in. And I was like, okay. And I had nothing in the room that I was in. I literally had an air mattress, and I was sleeping with my pit bull on a sheet because I left everything behind at my ex's place. Like I didn't take anything. And I was sleeping on the air mattress, and I had one pillow and like one sheet, and there was nothing here. And so this is like the transformation of, I think, my growth. Like I filled this space with like plants and like notes to myself and like my goals and all the books that I like to read. And so I think this overall is just like a kind of reflects the transformation that I've been through the last 2 years. Which is funny because like where I start, like the whole change that I had from starting with nothing when I left my ex, that's not like me. Like I'm always prepared. Like I got my stuff together. So
Yeah.
that was kind of crazy. I felt like rug was just taken from under me. I had to start from zero, and I built myself up again. It was very cool.
Yeah.
So that's what
And
this is. This hot, chaotic, organized chaos. That's what it is.
no, it looks good. It looks
Thank you.
I think it's probably my favorite background that I've had.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy because I'm real proud of this. Thanks.
No, of course. So you're a dog mom and you're a plant mom.
I'm a dog mom. I'm a dog mom more than anything. But yeah, and it's funny, my room doesn't get much light, but my plants are thriving, and makes me feel like I'm not a plant killer because that was my history in the past. And whatever I'm doing now, it's working. So I'm not going to change it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they do those plants do look thriving, so
Thank
um,
you.
they look well
They're happy.
fed. They're happy. That's good.
They're eating good.
They're eating good. All the water and sun. There you go. Um, but yeah, Mel, I found we were able to connect because I found you on Dan Koe, who is one of my favorite creators right now. Um,
We
how did
love
you
Dan Koe.
how did you find him?
So, in the last couple of years, I had my own kind of transformation where I just made the choice that I don't want to watch Netflix anymore, and I don't want to just have, mindlessly scroll on Instagram and TikTok. I'm like, I want to better myself because I want to better the people around me. God placed it in my heart to do that. And I realized there was big changes that I had to make in order to become that person. And YouTube is a great resource for finding people with like long form content, and that I can, instead of watching a show or whatever to entertain myself, I can watch someone talk about things that they've learned and see their transformation, and serve as a source of knowledge or just source of inspiration for myself to do better. But I found I'd start Dan. I just like stumbled upon him one day, and it's funny because I found out through an email. So he sends newsletters, and I always read them because he's just a great writer and he always has good information. But he sent a newsletter, and I read it all the way through. and I scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and it said like LLC Tempe, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was like, does he live in Phoenix? And I'm like, oh my gosh, he literally lives in the same city as me. So I was like, that is so cool. And I was like, that's happened with so many people that I found through the internet and like YouTube that I really
Mm,
admire. And turns out they happen to live in Phoenix. I'm like, wow, so cool. Would love to, connect in that space sometime with them. But yeah, so that's how I found him, and I just admire everything that he does, and I like how he carries himself. He's so young too, so it's really
mhm,
inspirational, and I love the humility that he has and the calmness. He's so grounded, and he's not overly in your face about everything that he knows, and I respect that so much. And
mhm.
the fact that he formed a community, I think community is always important when you are trying to have influence. It's not about spitting knowledge at people and telling them what they should know. It's about, hey, let's bounce ideas back and forth, and let's, we're in this together. And I'm huge on community. That's part of my culture. I'm an oldest sister. I'm big on just collective unity. And speaking of unity, I looked up the name of your podcast,
Uh-huh.
Henosis, because I love knowing the history behind names of things, and it, correct me if I'm wrong, but it means like unity and oneness, right?
Absolutely.
So cool. So cool. So, I mean, that's just all on brand with the mission that I'm on, and you as well. But I think that's the key that sometimes people miss the mark on. Is like it's about oneness. Everything that you do, it's not just about you. It's for the bigger picture, and it's for the greater good. It's always a collective
Mhm.
um, effort, whether you know
Yeah.
it or not. Hmm.
Yeah. Dan Koe, just to echo what you said, like he's killing it. I stumbled upon
So
him
good.
kind of like you as well. I forgot how I found him. I think I found him on YouTube first before I did Instagram. But he
Hmm.
he kind of blew up off of Instagram first, if I
Oh,
remember. I think
okay.
if I remember correctly.
I don't know. I found him through YouTube. I'm not sure, but
Okay. Either way, he's popping on both. you
yeah,
know.
great.
So
He's doing it
Dan, if you
right.
watch this, sorry if we butcher your history. But yeah, he has that community. I think it's called Modern Mastery. And then I'll admit I'm not super active on there as much as I'd like to be. But
Same
it's
here.
still a great resource to be a part of, and
It is.
seeing all these creators come together to kind of, like you said, bounce ideas, help each other out. It's kind of like, I don't know if people are familiar with, who Andrew Tate is, right? Okay, yeah. So he
Oh
has his
yeah.
own thing, similar to Dan, where it's a community, but they're on his. He's teaching certain things, and then Dan's teaching certain things as well. So it's I think it's huge. Whether you're a part of his or Dan's, it doesn't really matter. I think it's key to be a part of something where you're learning and you're growing and developing.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, Dan, he just the way he thinks, he's so. I love the way he communicates. Like he
Yes.
communicates so like it's precise. Like it's very
Yes.
precise, and it's like I feel like every single word is very
It hits.
intentional. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so he's. If you're not following Dan Koe, I highly recommend, if you're listening to this podcast, follow Dan Koe. You won't be disappointed because he will illuminate some light bulbs for you, and that's what he does for me. He makes you think about things and like, I never
Hmm.
saw it that way, or I never thought of it that way. And so, especially if you're a creator, I think his niche is very creator
Yes.
centric. You know what I mean?
He's such a creative. Like he's a great creator, content creator.
Hmm. And thank you for looking up the name of Henosis. I think you're the first person who's
Yeah.
done that. So,
Really? Well,
yeah.
I'm honored, and I think it's so cool. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, how'd you come up with that name? I know this is your podcast,
Uh,
but I'm curious.
no, no. Hey, it's a conversation. Well, I always wanted to do a podcast, right? And I was trying to find a name that was like a one word name. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I love simple names, one word.
yeah.
I'm very simple in my own nature. Um, and so I wanted a one word name, and I was just looking up different things. I think I've always been fascinated with like ancient culture, and
Hmm.
more so like ancient Greek,
It's
Roman.
Greek. Yeah, I saw that.
And so I like that stuff. I was trying to find a Hebrew name. I was trying to find like these different ancient languages. I was trying to look through
Hmm.
these different words. I felt like that came out so jumbled, but
No, 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 no. I get it. Yeah,
okay, good.
yeah, yeah. I feel
Hopefully
it.
people get it.
They'll get it. The right people will get it.
There you go. But I was just looking up names, and I was like, the intention of my podcast is exactly that, to bring people together and to not be so narrow minded, but be open minded. And I think that's the gist of what I'm trying to do here, is just get people together, share information, share
Yeah,
experiences in efforts to unite people together. And so,
yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, right? What I mean? No matter where you're at, where you're listen to this, um, we all want the same thing at the end of the day. So,
yeah.
and that's what I'm trying to do. And there's other podcasts very similar to what I'm doing, and they're doing it on bigger scales. But everyone has their own specific way of conducting that podcast and leading a conversation, and every single person thinks differently, and so I think I can ask different questions than someone else might. Do you listen to different podcasts too?
Oh yeah, definitely. And quick note before we
Yeah,
answer or
yeah.
answer that question. I just wanted to mention that I think, this theme has been coming up where we maybe compare ourselves to other people who are kind of doing the same thing. But I think
Mhm.
of people like, the greats like Kanye, Drake,
Mhm.
Lil Wayne. It's like they're all great, right? But they
Mhm.
bring their own influence and their own touch that cannot be replicated. So it doesn't matter what they're doing because they're them, it's
Mhm.
theirs and it's their own. And I think that's what you do here. It's just you are curating the people that you bring on here. I mean, I've seen you have a combination of like neuroscientists and sleep doctor and like
Mhm.
coaches, and it's so cool because you've handpicked these people because you've seen something in them and you see the value that they bring. And so I love your vision, and it because it's your own, like it's so special and it's unique, it's
Mhm.
yours. And you know focus on that. And I think the right people are going to find the right kind of value from it. But to answer your question about podcasts, yeah, I mean, I've definitely in the last 2 years, especially, I've replaced all entertainment with like audiobooks and podcasts. So I like to hear conversations. Like
Mhm.
I just love to hear stories, and I like to hear people's backgrounds and their perspective on things. I think, understanding that everyone is a teacher if you just listen, and just being a student to everyone is key. And just knowing that, you don't have to agree exactly with everything that someone says or their values, but everyone has different life experiences. So there's always going to be some value, and it's up to you to just see that in them. So where I'm at right now, I think I've had an evolution of the type of content that I listen to. But specifically at the moment, I really love to listen to Erwin McManus and his son, Aaron McManus. So Erwin McManus he's like a high level coach. He's a pastor. He's into fashion. He's the pastor of Mosaic Church. Amazing. Him and his son have a great dynamic. It's so wholesome and cute. But they used to have a podcast called Bad Already, and then they shifted it to Mind Shift. So it's really cool because Erwin is just he's so wise and grounded, and he feels like that uncle that we all want to have. He has great insight. I love listening to Dan Koe. I've been listening to Dan Koe for years now. Andrew Huberman.
Mhm.
Um, just, yeah, I just like to hear a lot of different perspectives, and I can't think of any more podcasts right now, but
Yeah.
those are the main rotating ones at the moment.
Yeah, those are the ones that are top of mind right now. So
Nice.
I remember listening to uh, Erwin and his son Aaron when they were battle ready.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, they're the coolest, probably pastors. You probably wouldn't
So
even,
cool.
if you saw them on the streets, you probably wouldn't even,
You wouldn't know. You
yeah, you
wouldn't
wouldn't
know.
know.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I'm sure you've heard about what happened with Hillsong. Did you hear about that?
Actually, I've heard like the surface of it, but I really don't know too much. I didn't look into it because
Uh,
it's just not on my
on your radar?
not on my radar of taking up space in my mind at the moment. But
Yeah,
I've heard people like bring it up. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
yeah.
You know.
I mean, just the it's the notion of like these. There's a lot of churches that are coming out with leaders that you can argue that they're wolves in sheep clothing.
Hmm.
You look at Hillsong, New York. I've actually gotten a chance to, uh, you know, be in the same room as Carl Lentz, and
Wow.
and it's unfortunate that what he has gone through was is so public. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like it sheds light on the church. Organized
Hmm.
organized church,
Yeah.
and it kind of paints it in a bad picture. And I've had my own experiences, and I'm not going to talk about that here on the podcast, but um, you kind of it's unfortunate that it an individual like that who's had so much influence,
Right.
is in the public light, and I feel like it's a bad. It kind of paints the church in a negative light. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then when they see a guy like Erwin, because Erwin, him and his church and Hillsong are two different churches, but they look similar as far as like the fashion. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so um, it's unfortunate. You know what I mean, that
Yeah.
it has to be painted in a bad light. But I want to. The reason why I bring that up is I want to know from your perspective, what kind of insights or what kind of nuggets of wisdom that you were able to get from um, Erwin and his son Aaron.
Yeah, love that question because I've learned so much from them. Actually, a friend was the one who introduced me to Erin. We just met up, and I was telling her what I was doing as far as life coaching, and that I want to work with creatives and creators, and I want it to be a whole different um, path that is not really seen in the coaching industry. And also, my faith is a huge my faith drives my life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no separation. Not that I, force my beliefs or anything onto people. I'm actually a new Christian, and I was in a New Age and Buddhist. I grew up Buddhist, and another story. But
Mm-hmm.
um, the way that Erwin can narrate Jesus is that Jesus is a genius. He's actually this ideal being that we can look to as far as having the essence of creation and empathy and just giving a fresh perspective on who Jesus was. And I love how he doesn't separate something so foundational for him from how he navigates and how he carries himself. They talk a lot about, just having mind shifts and just navigating life as, he's Salvadorian, so he just started from nothing and he made his way in America. And I think I relate to that because, I'm Laotian and you're Laotian, and that's kind of what our parents did, the generations before us. They had nothing and they came here and they had to start fresh. And some people really, some of our parents, they kind of sometimes they stay stagnant and they stay in that mindset of America's a scary place as someone who started with nothing, and you don't know the language, you don't know the people, and you don't know the culture. And then you see other I think maybe it's like the newer generations, our generation, it's like we're paving a way for Laotians. We're making a name for ourselves in a way that's never been done before. And so whenever I see a minority in that, having that kind of influence. I just it gives me a lot of hope. It gives me a lot of inspiration. So I think more than anything, Erwin, he's just, you listen to him talk and he gives you just this warm feeling of like comfort, groundedness. He's never being a know-it-all, like just the way he carries himself. I don't even think it's so much that I've learned from what he says, but it's more so who he is that I've learned, that it's just, I'm like, that's Jesus. That you can't be that person without Jesus. Like
Mm-hmm.
the humility that he has, the way that he is so open and so insightful, and just again, like he's so grounded, and I'm like, I want that.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to know me as that person. I want me to be that person in every single setting. And I think Erwin he's that person. And it's just really cool to see him in that space, and, again, bring his faith into it. And just, I love the relationship that he has with his son too. Very, very wholesome. So
Mm-hmm.
love that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I do want to get into our background. Like you mentioned, we're both Laotian American. Both come from. Are you? I think I'm second gen. Yeah, I'm second gen.
Yep,
Are you second gen too?
I am.
Okay. So our grandparents came here, right? And so our
Yeah.
grandparents came here, and I think it's very similar to a lot of immigrant stories.
Right.
They come here to America because there's better opportunities, right? And so, but at the same time, they come here with better opportunity, and then you know they 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 still have that um, immigrant, I guess, mindset. Where it's like they're being taught like you got to work hard, you got to go to school, you got to
Yep.
get a job, get a
Yep.
degree, which is nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. There's
Right.
been people who've been very successful following that life path. Um, but I wanted to know, like, being that you're a life coach now, was it difficult to transition into that? And like, what was it like? Because doing what we do, it's so different from the norm
Yeah.
of the Laotian culture. Although I think a lot of Laotians are entrepreneurial in spirit. But
Yeah.
um, how was that for you? Because you didn't go to school. Well, you did, right?
I did. I
Okay.
did. I did go to school. And my parents were like, now what? What are you doing?
Mm,
It's so, side note too, I am half white. So I am half white, but sometimes I forget that I'm white because my dad is because he was so into the Laotian culture. Like he
uh-huh.
is a foreigner's man in a white body, I swear. Sometimes it's really cool to see. My dad was so committed to the culture, and him and my mom, they understood each other so well. But it's interesting because I don't know if you can relate, but as a kid, I always knew. I don't know how I knew because no one told me, and this was never, entrepreneurship and content creation. It wasn't like a thing. It didn't really exist like that back, especially content creation. It didn't really exist back then. Entrepreneurship was just kind of like, some people had businesses, or you were like owner of Walmart. That was really it. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there wasn't this type of scale where you could scale in the world that we have today. So I don't know what it was. I always knew that I had intentions of going to college. I love learning. I was great at school. I love learning. Like that's always been, I've always been into that. But I just knew that I wasn't gonna do things the way that people were telling me I had to do it. I knew that I wasn't going to be following the structure, and I knew that I had to be doing something that hasn't been done yet, and not in like a self like idolizing way. I just felt like I had to do, like I felt like I was given a mission as a kid. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta do something here, like, and just following my life, I can see the patterns of like that's confirmation there. All the things that I've been through, all the roles that I've been given. I'm like, yeah, Um, but same thing. My mom and my grandma, they wanted me to go to school. They wanted me to be quiet and timid, and or not timid, but they wanted me to, be dainty and feminine. and work in an office and wear heels, and which, that stuff's cool. Like I'm very, I'm very feminine. I'm into my femininity, but I'm definitely not dainty. I'm very eclectic, and I'm the black sheep of my family for sure, and I think I've always been that way. I value having a childlike essence. I think that's the way I've carried myself all throughout life, and even into adulthood. I totally embrace being your full self and having childlike curiosity about the world around you, because I think when you have that, it allows you and it gives you permission to explore and learn more, and it challenges you to solve a lot of problems because you're so curious. So I've been navigating that way since I was young, and it was hard because I I wasn't I was always the kid challenging a lot of the traditions that we had and the rules. If we had to do something, I'm like, well, why are we doing that? And they'd be like, we don't know, just do it. And I'm like, well, why don't you guys know? And why are we doing it if you don't know? So I was always the outlier in many Laotian settings. Um, yeah, I feel like people were always like they always had their eyes on me, especially because I would usually be the only half white, half Laotian child in a lot of Laotian settings. And my grandma took me everywhere with her. My parents were always working, so my grandma really raised me. I like slept in a bed with her till I was 13. We shared a room. Like we were like connected at the hip. And rest in peace to my grandma, love her. But we'd go everywhere. And the thing with Laotian culture is that, and a lot of Asian culture, is that you are a reflection of your parents. Like, Mulan's like, you got to bring honor to your family. And that is such a real thing. It's like everything that you do is going to be scrutinized, and people are watching in that community. They are watching because it reflects, how your parents have raised you. And so I take a lot of pride in always bringing honor to the people that I know, and especially like my mom and my dad and my grandma, who they raised me. Like, I think I really try to be the best person that I can be, because I know that I am a representation of them, and it's more than just me. So I try to find the balance between that and also embracing who I am meant to be, right? Um, so that was hard growing up, because I was always challenging things, and it was hard for them because I think they thought I was being rebellious, but in reality, I was just, I respected their authority, and I respected all their insight and their knowledge. I'm so blessed with very smart, wise, and just great influences growing up as far as adult figures. Like, they're just, I'm so blessed.
Mhm.
Um, they're just good people. And it was just hard because they, everything that they told me that they wanted me to do was always out of love. That's usually how Asian parents are. It's just, they want you to go to school and get a good education because they want you to have a secure future. And they've been conditioned to believe that because of the circumstances that they were in from the countries that they have left. It's like, that's the only way you come to America to get that type of opportunity. But the
Mhm.
great thing about our country is that that's not the only way to have opportunity. And
Mhm.
somehow I just knew that as a kid. My dad was kind of an entrepreneur. He was always doing little side things. He never really had like a job, and he'd always find ways to make it work. My dad is amazing. I think he's one of the biggest influences for why I wanted to just work for myself and do things differently, which is funny because even to this day, my dad's like, "Well, you went to school, you got a degree. Why don't you just go do that?" And again, it's a projection of security that they feel in their mind that
Mhm.
gives us that. But in reality, nothing can actually give us security. Yeah, maybe there will be a little bit more consistency, but one thing that I like to look at, the way that I like to see it, is that you have, because it's so consistent, is because you have someone telling you what to do, right? You know, and for me, the freedom in working for myself and exploring my own path is that no one's telling me what to do. I have the power to figure it out on my own, and I think that no one's going to invest into me more than me.
Mhm.
So for me, that allows me to take my power back, and just, it requires a lot of discipline and a lot of self responsibility and being accountable for your actions and being aware of everything that you do, how it's so intentional. But that's the life I like to live anyways. So it just, everything that I'm doing feels so aligned. But that's how the experience was for me. And I was, I love the Laotian culture. I was always deeply because of my mom and grandma, they had such a good, big influence on how dedicated I was to my culture. I would do the Nangfengkan pageants and I would do the Lao New Year festivals every year. And my mom's volunteered every year with fundraisers, and just she was always at the temple, giving food to the monks. And she was just so selfless. And same with my grandma. And I respected that. And so I would, follow their example, and I did the same thing, and whenever I could help I would, and I try to bring something to that community and the culture that I feel like it's lacking, which is why I'm in this space now, because I feel like Laotian culture really lacks a lot of depth and vulnerability, and we don't encourage each other as much as we should. It's a very going back to the whole idea that it's very you're being watched, like everyone's waiting to criticize you almost, it seems, but in reality it's not that they're waiting to criticize you. It's just like there's something internal going on there. So when people are really critical, it's because they're really critical of themselves. So when I see that being projected and reflected in the community, I know that there's internal issues going on that everyone is experiencing as a collective. So for me, with my coaching, I want to really just set an example, not even tell people information, but just set an example as a Laotian American that it's okay to be yourself, and it's okay to be scared, but you owe it to not only yourself, but your community, and for the Laotian collective to do your best and try your best and make your own decisions and question things, and just think big picture. It's not just about you. I think that's really big for me, and I admire that in the community, that it's not just about you. Everyone's playing a part in a big role.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, you kind of venture off and you kind of go against, I guess, the norm. You do have a lot of eyeballs on you, and that's kind of the way our culture is, and yeah, you'll get critiqued and criticized, and some of it, may hurt your feelings. But yeah, I do want to say, like, yeah, like everything you just said, it's really spot on, when it comes to describing how our culture is. But yeah, I really want to also recognize that what you're doing is it's awesome, because we do need that vulnerability, and we do need, everyone on board, because, the way to make it is different today. You know what I mean?
It's different. It's always going to change.
It is, and we have to embrace that as a culture, And a lot of our community very entrepreneurial. Like a lot of members of my family that have restaurants or some kind of small business.
Yeah.
But there are different ways we can succeed as a just as an individual. You know what I mean? And so I think we have to, it's going to take someone like you, someone like me, to kind of show, like, hey, like, we can actually make it as content creators, or we can make it as doing something else, or we can have multiple things that we're doing. You know what I mean? And we're going to be okay. You know what I mean? And so, and again, not to say school is not the right path. It's,
Right.
It just may not be the path that's for everyone. You know what I mean? And
Right. Right.
I wish in our culture too, like we would embrace that a little bit more, because there's I could think of just different family members who didn't go to school, and that was the expectation that they had for everybody, and it kind of set them back, and so then
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to see.
Right.
But yeah, I want to definitely thanks for sharing that, and that's very well said, Mel. But you got into coaching, and you're a Jay Shetty certified life coach. And have you listened to any of his podcasts?
Oh yeah, I don't know why I forgot to mention
Okay.
him.
Okay.
He was the one who actually got me into this whole world of self-development
Okay.
and you know the life coaching, and I just stumbled upon it when I was in a really, really tough place in my life. My mom had just got diagnosed. This was about 3 years ago, a little over
Mm-hmm.
now. My mom just got diagnosed with lung cancer, stage 4.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during COVID, which is crazy because it's just like, okay, now we have this, we have COVID that attacks the lungs, and my mom just got diagnosed with lung cancer, and all these things were happening. And I wasn't working, and I wasn't working because I was taking care of my mom. And I was just
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I was about 25-ish, a little bit younger. And I was in a relationship at the time, and we were just, trying to figure out what we were wanting to do with our lives. And I felt it. This is before I knew God and Jesus. I was very much so into New Age spirituality at the time because
Mm-hmm.
that gave me some sense of control. So that's where I was at this point in my life. And I felt I just like I had a knowing in me that something was coming, and I needed to be patient. I needed to stop rushing there was just this voice, and it wasn't my voice. It was just like something's coming, like calm down. And it felt so like peaceful and comforting. And I was like, let me just listen. Let me just listen. And finally, I just stumbled upon Jay's life coaching school, his program, and it immediately was just like, there it is. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh my goodness. Like, I've always been placed in that position where I see the best in people, and I want to help people just develop the best of themselves. Like, I was a student government person, but the fun kind. Like, I loved seeing motivational speakers, and like, I love superhero movies. I love seeing people just overcome something, and just, I love a good success story. I love I
Yeah.
love seeing transformation. I think that's what it was for me. It was transformation. That's a key theme in my practice, which I think a lot of people who are in the space understand that concept because we have gone through our own transformation. That's why it's a key value that we have. Um, but yeah, I got into that space, and it just opened the doors for connecting with so many other coaches. And I realized I'm like, because I was in a space where I'm like, what am I good at? What does the world need? And what can I get paid for? That's the concept of ikigai. I don't know if you've
Mm-hmm.
heard of that. Yeah,
Heard
yeah,
it.
yeah. So ikigai, that's what it is. It's a Japanese concept of your purpose. Um, but I'm like, well, what can I, I'm good at being myself. I'm good at being nice. I'm good at listening to people and helping. Like, how do I do that? What do I do with that? And it just came to me, and I had no idea that this was even a realm of like a career that you could get paid for. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even know the impact that it could make. And so, yeah, I started exploring more of these other people that were in this space, and I connected with other coaches. And I completed my program while taking care of my mom while she was sick, and it just helped me through so much, knowing that I wasn't helpless, and
Mm-hmm.
that combining that with my Buddhist background and my New Age spirituality at the time, that it all just kind of intertwined. So I thought I was in a really good place. Um, it helped a lot for the person who I was at that time,
Yeah.
definitely. And especially within the last year, I've grown so much in this space. I was treating it like a side hustle for a minute. I just left the F&B industry, so food, beverage. Like, I bartended my way to put myself through school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm really good at it, bartending, serving. So I was in that. I was in restaurant management. So I did that, and after my mom passed in May, it was interesting because he was trying to tell me, you need to get out, you need to finally take a bet on your, like, go all in. I've got you. It's okay. And I had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fear that I wasn't going to be able to sustain myself. Because that's natural, it's a scary thing, something you've never done before. You go
Mm-hmm.
all in, you're like, okay, how am I going to eat? But my mom passed, and God was like, you cannot go back to that space because you are a different person now. And that environment doesn't nourish who I need you to be. Um, so I went full time, and it's just forced me to grow so much. And I think that's amazing what God does, is that He puts you in really uncomfortable situations for your own growth because He knows what you can handle, but not only so what you can handle, but what He can do through you. So I want to make that very clear. Everything that I've gone through, it's not my own doing. It's because God has given me peace and strength, and He has told me the mission that I'm on,
Mm-hmm.
And especially just when the last year, it's such a huge shift that I've made where I thought everything that I was doing was on my own. And yeah, it's, humans have so much potential and capacity to carry ourselves. We have so much power, but there is no power that is greater and bigger than God. And I've shifted to that in the last year where I'm like, it's no longer my plan, it's God's plan. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just obedient and I'm a servant and whatever he wants me to do for the good of other people, because he just calls me to serve, which is so interesting because when I got into coaching, I was like, I just want to serve. I want to serve. And all these biblical terms were coming into my heart and my mind
Mm-hmm.
before I had any knowledge of the Bible or anything. And yeah, he was planting all these seeds in me. And now I look back and I'm like, he was there all along. And I was calling it something else. I thought it was my own doing. It wasn't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, he calls me to serve, and he's developing me into someone who I don't even know I don't even know who I'm going to be, in the future, but whoever he wants me to become, I'll do it because I know it's to serve other people.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with that.
You mentioned um, your background or your experience in New Age and spirituality.
Mhm.
And now here you are, full blown believer in God.
Full blown.
Full blown, you know.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Because I,
Yeah.
I'll say this, and before you answer, like, because when I was growing up, same deal. Grew up in Buddhist background, went to the temple. I even spent a week in a temple with one of the um, I forget what we call them, but one of the monks.
The monks,
It's,
yeah.
yeah, and so I spent one of the lead monks spent the week in the temple, and and that wasn't really life changing, to be honest with you. But I dated this girl in high school. Her and her family went to church. They invited me to church. Fell in love with it, because it felt real. You know what I mean? Like um, the message that was being, spoken felt hit me right in my heart. You know what I mean? And it resonated with me so much, and I dedicated a good deal of my life, 5 years to it, and by 5 years I mean like being a part of the church, being a staff member and whatnot.
Mhm.
But even before all that, I believed in God. Like I remember as a child just saying, God, if you're real,
Me too.
making these little prayers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me
and
too.
and funny enough, I I ended up following God, being in church for a good amount of a good portion of my life. But yeah, I know your story is not like mine, but it's funny that because people in our culture, we don't. No one goes to church. No one believes in God. You know what I mean?
No,
We have
yeah.
we follow Buddhism.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I always love to hear the transformation that God has done. The way that he draws people in.
Hmm.
And it's so interesting because for the longest time, I was very like almost anti-Jesus. Like I was in such denial. Christians really irritated me, and that goes back to the whole, organized religion and just the way that I associated God and Jesus with the people that were representations of him. But where I'm at now is I realize that people are not perfect and he knows that. But that's the reason that when we begin to label ourselves as followers and believers of Jesus and God, we are the ambassadors, so we have a lot of responsibility. We have to be very careful. And in my experience, when I was in that place of I was Buddhist, but like it's part of our culture. It's ingrained in Laotian culture. I've been to Laos several times, and I've gone to the temples, and it's so holy, and I love it. I respect our culture so much, and I will always admire our culture. um but I was in this place where I was doing that, and then I started, and this is kind of even before New Age spirituality kind of blew up a little bit more, it's really pretty mainstream now, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it, I started, as even as a kid, I was into the occult. I was like interested in witches and magic. I read all the Magic Treehouse books. I don't know if you remember those Magic
Yeah,
Treehouse
yeah.
books, dude.
Throwback.
I would ask my dad for like $30 for the book fairs
Yes, the
every
book
month.
fairs.
Yes, dude, erasers, Magic Treehouse books. That was in my cart. But um, so I was always into magic and just I was always intrigued in the other side and the just like the limitless. I think
Mm-hmm.
I want to call it that. It's something beyond limitations that we can't fathom. And I didn't know what it was, but it just intrigued me so much. And so I started getting into that and exploring religion a little bit, philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I started getting drawn to crystals and tarot and manifestation, which I think I think people are quick to label it as evil, but when they say that, it's not necessarily that it's evil and bad, because I think most people who are drawn to that, they are just seeking light and some control of their life again and just love, for the most part. That's what all that stuff is about. I guess that's what the people who are intrigued into those things are about. They're seeking this love and this light. And it's interesting because all of that stuff is biblical. Like all of the
Mm-hmm.
concepts in New Age it's all biblical. It's just been repurposed. And I didn't even know that before. I never read the Bible. I was never into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't, when I started actually committed to reading the Bible and getting serious about my relationship with God in the past year, I started seeing, I'm like, all these concepts are not new. Like people don't even know that this is not a new concept. It's biblical. God made these things, but they've been taken out of context and been used in ways that we manipulate them. But that's another story. Um, so I was in that space, and I again, I wouldn't come to God. I had a really good friend, actually, my one of my best friends that I live with now. She was a Christian. She's Ethiopian, so that's part of her culture. It's interesting enough
Mm-hmm.
that we would just go back and forth about the existence of Jesus or whether Christianity was the truth or not. And I was like, I would try to argue with logic, and so whenever someone would tell me about the facts, it wouldn't resonate because it just didn't resonate because that's not where I was. And I didn't care to know more because I was so content, or so I thought I was, with, being able to manipulate reality with my crystals and tarot and, having control of these things. Um, and I think that's the downfall of humanity, is that we try to play God and we try to manipulate everything, and it becomes really self-serving sometimes. But when you let God do it, he has a bigger plan, and it's for the best of everyone. So I came to that realization. But I guess maybe this is a good time to get into how I came to God.
Mm-hmm.
So I am pretty straight edge. Like I'm allergic to alcohol. I'm one of the Asians who are allergic to alcohol, so I don't drink. Um, I smoked weed a little bit, like in college, like after my bartending shifts. But even then, I was just like, I didn't really care for it because I'm such an overthinker in in my sober life that when I would do those things, I was like, where
Yeah.
am I? So I'm like,
Yeah.
this is probably not good for me. I'm gonna go into psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
So I just we live a straight edge life. And my ex at the time, the man that I was with at the time, he was into psychedelics, and I was not into. I was just not into and doing anything. Again, I was straight edge, and I still am straight edge, but I was never into doing any of that. And long story short, I had an accidental. I was not supposed to hallucinate. I took a psychedelic. I was not supposed to hallucinate because this is not the type of psychedelic that you should be hallucinating on. This
Mm-hmm.
became, this was, we had a kind of like a date for just like resetting and healing, and all these things were so aligned with the world that I was in as far as New Age spirituality. And again, all I wanted to do was find this love and this light, and I wanted to know this. I wanted to get access to this truth that was out of this world, that I just knew was I could tap into it. I didn't know what to call it, didn't know what it was, but I knew that um, there was a way to get to it, and that's kind of the realm that I was in. However, it was never my intention to take a psychedelic and do that. It was an accident. This was an accident. And throughout my experience, God came to me, and I just want a disclaimer. I try not to focus on the way that I found Jesus and God, because I think people will try to discredit God by saying, "Oh, psychedelics." You see a lot of things, but the thing is, God is bigger than anything. He can use anything to get to you. He can use hardships in your life. He can use you being at the lowest point in your life. He can use anything to come to you. And I think, looking back at my life, he had tried to draw me in for so long. He was planting seeds and everywhere and the people around me. And I never gave him a chance. And he literally came to me in a way that I remember the first thing that I said when he came to me was like, "Oh my gosh, it's all real." And I was like in tears because I had so much shame of he showed me all the times that I had denied him before. And in that moment, it was just truth. And I know a lot of people, I went down a whole rabbit hole after my experience of, if people experience the same thing. I think we use a lot of verbiage with the people in the psychedelic community with sort of this truth, oneness, wholeness. People will use the word God, the universe, like one.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I saw that God was outside the universe. So he kind of showed like I was in this realm. I definitely saw like the dark part of that realm too, which was terrifying. And then he came to me, and I was just able to see that he was like, "This is not the way to me. I'm here. I've always been here. I never leave you. I'm here for everyone." And it's funny because I had a Bible on my bookshelf that I was gifted as a young kid, like a huge Bible. It has my name engraved in it. Actually through a Mormon woman, because my mom and grandma got their citizenship through the Mormon church, which is a whole nother story. It's really interesting. But he like prompted me to get up and go grab the Bible. And I started flipping through the pages, and I didn't know what I was looking for. And he was like telling me like, it's going to be there. And I opened up to Revelations 22:13, and it said, "I am the Alpha, the Omega. I am the beginning and the end." And I just was sobbing. I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's real." And sorry, this is more like long story long. I try to make it
You're
long story
good. You're
short,
good.
but I'm such a big picture kind of person. But from then on, he just showed me all of the truth, and in the ways that I was not living in the truth, and that I was in the darkness, and I was in this
Mm-hmm.
false light that I thought was light, but it was never the full truth. So he showed me all that. And so I just couldn't go back to normal life after that. I was pretty shook for about like a month, not gonna lie. I wasn't normal.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, how do I go back to my normal life? Like I can't deny what I had seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started going through this rabbit hole of people finding Jesus through their psychedelic, like religious experiences, because this was more than I felt the typical psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
I was still there. I was very much aware of what was happening and who I was, and it wasn't like the room wasn't moving and stuff. I just like it was almost like I was getting visions, almost more so than hallucinations, like
Mm-hmm.
visions.
Wow.
So the things that I saw in my vision were biblical, and I didn't even know at the time. I had not read the Bible. I had not been in any space where I would have known these things. And it was funny. The next day I went and told my Christian friend. I was like, "I get it now." And she was at this point where she was struggling with her faith, because that's part
Mm.
of, that's part of the journey with God. It's just like, well, because you're in the world, you're going to question things, and he wants you to do that. You should question the truth. You should question it, and he encourages you to
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Yeah.
And this was at a point where she was struggling with her faith, and I started telling her everything that I experienced, and she was like also in tears, because she was like, "What?" Because she was like, "All these things that you're saying are biblical." And I was like, "Whoa, I don't know. I never read the Bible. I don't know."
Yeah.
And so I just saw things that were just their ancient laws of God that I didn't know. And then from there, I was kind of like a lukewarm Christian. I was still, I had my
Mm-hmm.
crystals, and I was still into that world. And then progressively, God kept putting me through trials that forced me to lean on him instead of going to outward sources, because that wasn't working. It even came to a point where I started getting like demonic dreams, like very, very terrifying. Like I would physically feel things in my body that would wake me up, that I was
Yeah.
like, what that was, I've never experienced that. And it could have been like the things that I was doing. I don't know exactly what it was, but I knew I needed to go to God. Like I remember even at some point in my dreams where like I would see a demon and I would start rebuking it in Jesus's name. And I didn't even know to do that. Like this,
Hmm.
again, I was a lukewarm Christian. Like I saw what I saw, so I thought I believed, but I realized it wasn't enough at some point. Even the devil believes in God. The devil knows God's real, you know. But so I came to that point where God was like, you need to let me guide you instead of you going outwards. And so from this point, I just was like, you know what? Let your will be done. What I'm doing is not working. Like
Yeah.
you clearly want me to serve a purpose. I will do it. So from there, I just never looked back. And I think for me, I'm trying to bring a new essence to what being a Christian is. Again, I think a lot of people get turned off because of organized religion and the way that a lot of Christians are hateful. A lot of Christians give a really bad reputation to Jesus and God, and that's a human thing. That's not a God thing, right? You can, and He helps with that. The more that you let Him help with that, and the more obedient you are, He'll show you exactly who He wants you to be and how you should treat people and the the values that you should have innately. And I think I'm such a creative person, and he's allowing me to use my creativity and bring this new, fresh perspective to what it's like to be that person. And it's more so about me leading by example, because that's what Jesus did. Like I'm I'm showing through my transformation, the way that he has transformed me. That is what he wants to do for everyone. He doesn't want people to live in the darkness. He wants you to live in his love and his light and have comfort. And um just throughout my journey, my 8-year relationship that I left, I got cheated on. I left with nothing. My mom had cancer. I was taking care of her. I wasn't working, trying to figure out what I was doing with my life. And my mom passed in May. Throughout it all, I've had so much. I mean, it's been hard. Don't get me wrong. It's been insane, like so hard. Um, but God has just been, I feel like he's put this shield on me that I can't explain. And he's just given me so much peace and comfort and strength. And I know that it's not my own. So I think my role here is to show other people through the way that I live and the way that the things that he's done for me is that that's who he is. And it's not, I'm not here to preach about who, I guess, like, my religion or my faith. I'm not here to tell anyone what the truth is, but because that's not the way that I learned. I had to experience it for myself.
Yeah.
And all that he wants is for people to have a relationship with him. Stop going to other people for who he is, because the whole point is to have direct access to him, and that's what he wants for everyone. So I think for me, I'm just trying to contribute to rewriting that narrative um, that knowing Jesus is corny and that it's boring and that it's prudish. He transforms you in a way that you can't do it on your own, and I can't explain it. But I think I'm just leading by example, and all of the all of the bad things about myself that he sheds light on, I don't feel guilty because I know that he's showing me in a way that he's giving me grace. And before I knew him, I would be aware of my downfalls and I would feel so much guilt and shame and I would beat myself up. And now it's like I see myself the way that he allows me to see myself the way that he sees me, and he allows me to love myself the way that he loves me, because he is the only being that knows all of you. There is no other person in your life that will completely know you. That space is reserved for God, and I think it's so cool. So he knows exactly what you need. He knows exactly what you're going to go through. And just in my life, that's my testimony, is that he's transformed me from the other extreme side of that to where I'm at now. And he's taught me like forgiveness and just shed light on so many things that I couldn't do on my own. And there's, again, it's not me. It's what God has done for me to show other people, you know.
That's awesome. You were talking about how you were seeing all these biblical things, these visions, right?
hmm
Can you recall what any of those were?
Yeah. Oh man, it's been a while now, and I feel like every time I retell this story, it gets a little butchered, and I leave a lot of key components out. But it's okay because I'm at this point where I'm comfortable with people not understanding the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just not necessary. I used to struggle with being misunderstood, and now I'm like, you don't need to understand me because
Yeah.
only God can do that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, what I was at one point, I felt this darkness at one point. Like I just I didn't know where it was coming from, but I saw it. I looked in the mirror and I saw it and I knew that it wasn't me, but it was trying to trick me into believing that it was me. And I was like, what is that? And then my
Mm-hmm.
ex pulled me away from there. He was like, don't do that. And it was interesting enough because we had this conversation. I was like, what was that thing? I kept calling it a thing. And he's like, I don't know, but I've been running away from it my whole life. Like, and I was like, what? You seen that thing too? And he was like, yeah, like it's this energy that it follows me and like I don't want to tell too much of his story
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's not my
yeah.
business to tell, but it's interesting because it's this energy that I've been familiar with that I see in the world. It's this dark sense of like hopelessness, just false truth, not knowing what the truth, just I don't know, like there's no peace. It's not a peaceful feeling, right? It's just we
Mm-hmm.
see it in the world every day, but I felt like I saw it so concentrated and I was like, what is that thing? It was just pure evil. Like I felt sick to my stomach. I was
Mm-hmm.
terrified. I felt like hopeless and
Yeah.
I didn't know how to describe it. And so that was revealed to me first that I was not I was the it just I knew the veil had been lifted. This is something that is there. It wasn't a new thing coming, but it was there and it's always been there and this veil was lifted. That's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then God revealed himself to me in a way that I just knew that it was God, but it felt like I couldn't quite reach him all the way. Like I could see what was happening and I knew that there was this goodness and this oneness and unity. And I knew that he was just everywhere and encompassing everything. He was all the goodness in all the world. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I couldn't quite communicate with him like completely in the way that I wanted to. And then at one point, Jesus came to me. And it was funny because it was just like the silhouette of Jesus. And behind him, in like a very far distance, it was like this gold kingdom that was floating. And there was like gems, and it was just bright. And I just felt this like sense of he knows me, he understands me, and I can communicate with him. And he was telling me things telepathically. I was just like in awe, and I felt shame that I didn't accept him. And
Mm-hmm.
like I just knew it was him. Like when you know Jesus, you just know Jesus. I just knew it was him, and
Yeah.
he was just comforting me, and I was getting upset because I was like, oh my gosh, my ex, I was like, he doesn't know, like he's living in this darkness, and I can't help him. And I was freaking out. My ex was like, what's going on with you? I'm like, you're not gonna understand. And he's like, you have to realize you're in a weird state of mind. I'm like, no, I'm still here. Like I know exactly what is happening, but this what is happening right now is profound. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
more than just the psychedelics. Like something spiritual and religious is happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that. I was still very grounded. I was aware. I was very much in control of my words, and I was in control still.
Yeah.
So, but I just knew it was something more divine that was happening there. And I started getting this sensation of like time not existing. And it's so funny because they say God is the only thing that's outside of time, and he's the only thing that's eternal. That's the reason why we can comprehend that concept, because why
Mm-hmm.
would we be able to understand what eternal is if we don't know what eternal, if we don't have any example of what eternal is? God is the only thing that is eternal.
Yeah.
So I started getting this knowing that the past had happened, the now was happening, and the future was already one. So everything felt done. And it's so funny because that's a biblical term, that it is already done. And I didn't know that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just so cool that all these things were happening and they turned out to be biblical facts later on
Yeah.
that I had found. Um, and and he just kind of showed me, I've been walking in this light, and I wasn't quite all the way there yet. And he just showed me, like, here it is. This is the big picture. Come home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's how that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
just throughout my life after that point, things were happening the way that he transformed me, and was I wasn't reading the Bible again. I wasn't reading. I was a believer, but I wasn't reading. I wasn't doing the things that I should have been doing to nourish my relationship with him. And the way that he would give me messages and transform me, I would later come to find those were all biblical too. So I was like, this is the truth. Like, there's two ways that you can experience religious reality or spiritual reality, I guess. One is, I guess, through our faith, in the sense of looking at it through our faith, is that you can read scripture and Bible, and it can be confirmed through your life, or you can have life experiences and it is confirmed in the scripture. So that's the latter happened for me, where these things were happening, and he was transforming me and giving me all these this information in the way that he drew me in, and it would later get confirmed, and I was just like, wow, like there's no other explanation for this. And it aligned with other people in my life who had experienced Christ, and I was like, I've been missing out on this my whole life. I had no idea that you guys were tapped in, and you've just been representing it wrong. you know um so yeah, that's essentially what happened. And even to this day now, I'm all in. I'm full in. I am a faithful servant to Jesus, and whatever he wants me to do, I do it. And he just shows me time and time again that he has my back, and
Yeah.
there's nothing that I can't do without him. And the mission that I'm on, it's not my mission. It's the mission that he tells me that I am on. And this sense of confidence that I have now, it's not my confidence. I
Yeah.
struggled with confidence for a long time. It's a different type of confidence in knowing when you are backed by the authority of God. It's not me deciding what I want to do. I told you earlier, every day that I wake up, I say, God, show me the day that you want me to have. What do you want me to do? I will do it. Instead of asking, like, can you make this happen for me? Because I realize the things that I want, they're never going to be any. God has better things for me, essentially. It's just like
Yeah.
what I think I'm asking for, he has something better. So now I just allow him to show me what he wants for me. And it's just been so freeing and liberating. And it's just a new type of knowing that I have, instead of a self-fulfilling confidence that is fleeting. And it, especially in the last year, he's deconstructed my identity, because it was so based in the world. As a woman, I think I used a lot of like my appearance as a woman, because growing up, I was I didn't have any confidence. And once I started getting attention from my appearance, I was young, and so I thought that was the way that I would get attention, and that's what made me valuable. And I remember in the beginning of January of this year, God told me, when my mom was fighting with cancer, that he was going to take her. So since January. And it was interesting because my mom was doing so good. We, as a family, we were fighting so hard, and she's at one point we thought she beat it, because she was combining chemo with like her holistic therapy, and she was doing so good. And so I had a lot of faith. And then in January, I was in a plane coming back from San Francisco for New Year's. And I just remember God being like, hey girl, like, my daughter, you need to prepare, and I'm going to give you a lot of strength during this time, because I need to take your mom. And I was a little bit in denial, but it was like a knowing that I had, and it was a knowing that I've experienced throughout all these other cycles that he had been with me. And so I just knew. And he also told me that I needed to let go of my identity of using my appearance for my identity, and just all these things that were fleeting, that are not stable and consistent. There's no firm foundation. So he tells me a lot of things, and now I'm at this point where I just listen, because I know if I don't listen, the rug gets pulled out from under me. Like, he sends the flood. I think most people experience that in their life, when you know that you're not aligned with something anymore, whether it be a job or a relationship or whatever that you're doing, the people around you, when you know that you're outgrowing it and you need to move on. Excuse me. We try to stay comfortable, and we want to hold on to it, because it becomes part of our identity. But when your identity is rooted in Jesus, in God, he allows you to just know him, and whatever he takes you through, any storms that you go through, you just have this peace. And that got me through this past 3 years of my life, is leaving an 8-year relationship, finding out that I was being cheated on time and time again. I thought it was just one point. I thought it was once at one point, and then he I don't know why it kept coming up, but it would get revealed that it had been several times over time, even though I had already left and I left that whole life behind. And I'm like, God, what are you trying to show me? Like, what are you trying to show me? And he was
Mm-hmm.
trying to show me forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I was being put in all of these instances and circumstances where I could have been resentful, I could have been hateful, I could have, I could have blasted my ex for what he did.
Yeah.
Um, and I could have just done it in a very worldly way. I could have been a terrible person, but I'm not that kind
Mm-hmm.
of person because God doesn't allow me to be that person. So he showed me to have forgiveness and empathy for someone who was struggling with something internally. And
Mm-hmm.
so and he told me, he's like, you need to pray for that guy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's so hard. God calls you to love your enemies and pray for people who hurt you. And so he taught me forgiveness, and it's just so interesting, the things that you can go through. And if you have God, he makes you look at it so differently, and he
Mm-hmm.
teaches these things that he calls us to be. So
Yeah. Outside of forgiveness, is that one of the biggest lessons you've learned in your walk with God, or is there another lesson that you were taught?
yeah, he's been so many different roles to me depending on the season of life that I'm in. So at one point it was forgiveness, at another point it was identity, um, and the point that I'm in, it's been so many different seasons and stages that he's showed me different lessons. But I think the one that I'm in right now that I want to talk about is pushing my limitations. So it kind of intertwines with confidence again, where it's no longer my confidence. He took all the things away from me that I thought was my identity and were sources of my confidence. And he showed me, these are not you. All of
Mm-hmm.
the expressions of yourself, all of this stuff, this is not you,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's an expression of you, but it's not you. They can be taken away. It's not you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he showed me that because he has put me on a mission, I can have fear, but I can still act on the things that he places in my heart to do because it's for his purpose. I am
Mm-hmm.
serving out his purpose. And again, there's something bigger at play here, and I'm just doing what he wants me to do. And it's really challenging me to go out of my comfort zone and push myself outside of my boundaries, because the boundaries that I have, those are boundaries I've placed upon myself. But
Mm-hmm.
when you have God, he is the only thing that is limitless. And again, it goes back to my interest in like limitless and just the other world and something that's so unfathomable, and um, being into magic and all that. And God has been the most magical thing that surpasses all of the magic that I thought was magic. He's the most ethereal. It's the most ethereal realm I've ever been in. I mean, if you're listening, if you're someone who's into magic, just give God a chance and let him show you how magical he is. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
so cool to see. But he just challenges me to act even when I am afraid, and not try to build my own identity, but let him do it. And that is so liberating, because I know that he is creating me and he's forming me into someone that I like, so great that I can't even imagine. And again, it's not even a self-serving thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
someone great in the name of him. So
Yeah.
that feels really good, because I'm like, I'm so excited to meet her. I'm so excited to meet that version of me that God's going to continuously transform me into. So again, that goes back to transformation. Transformation is a huge concept for me, and that's what God does. And that's the name of my brand, is Metanoia. Which is funny. The story behind that is that metanoia means a transformation, a renewal, a deep spiritual renewal of one's heart, way of life, and mind.
Mm-hmm.
And before I even knew God, I came up with that name because I was into the whole idea of transformation. I was really into butterflies, because I just, not because, it's a feminine thing. I was never into butterflies ever, but for some reason they were just a huge symbol of transformation. I think that's the same for most people. So we think of butterflies, we think of transformation. It's a very common symbol that is used in
Mm-hmm.
coaching, which is okay. And I think it's really cool. We can all recognize that there's something really symbolic about butterflies and transformation. It shows all the stages that it goes through, and
Mm-hmm.
it thrives, and it's such a beautiful thing, right? Um, and so I had that concept in mind, and come to find later, metanoia is actually it's a almost a biblical concept once again of spiritual transformation. It takes a deep kind of conversion and spiritual transformation to achieve a bigger transformation than a surface level transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool that God revealed that to me later on. He was like, hey, this word that you chose, metanoia, because I like the whole
Mm-hmm.
metamorphosis thing, metanoia, it's also established in me, and I didn't know when I chose
Mm-hmm.
that, and it's all so aligned now that I've stuck with it, and it's just aligned with everything that my mission is at the moment. So
That's awesome.
mhm.
Butterfly right here.
I know. I saw that. I was like, oh, it's so cool. I love it.
That's funny because I didn't even. I mean, you might have had it on your, I think your link tree, um, or I think you used beacons or whatever. One of your links. I think I saw
Beacons.
butterflies. Beacons.
Beacons.
Beacons. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I
You
used
use beacons
beacons
or
too.
Linktree?
I think I used beacons. Yeah.
Okay,
But
good.
I had no idea. I just chose a shirt because I like the shirt.
Look at that. See?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. Well, Mel, was there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to kind of touch on?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I talked so much. I don't even know.
It's okay if you
Um,
don't. It's okay if you don't,
yeah,
because I can
I
roll
don't know.
into my final three questions.
Let's go ahead and go to your final three, and whatever needs to come out will come out.
Okay, cool. So at the end of every podcast, I ask three questions, and I love it because every single person answers these questions differently.
Hmm.
First question is, what is your definition to success?
Ooh, great question. Okay. Oh man, that's a great question.
Thank you.
Wow. My definition of success. I can't even define that anymore because I want God to define that for me.
Okay.
I feel like I limit myself when I define it. Before I had God, I think success would have been to be financially free, be able to travel, retire my parents, same old, have some influence, make multi-million dollars,
Mm-hmm.
live wherever I want, live a good lifestyle. That would be my version of success, Mel
Mm-hmm.
without God. But now I I think God's going to define that for me because I know it's even bigger. It surpasses all of those things. And I want what God is going to define success as for me because it looks
Mm.
different for everyone. But I just know whatever He has for me is better than anything I could imagine. So that's my answer.
Okay, I like it. Next question is, what is your definition of love?
God.
There you go.
God is love. Yep.
There you go. And then final question is, what is what are we doing here? What is the meaning to our life as humans?
Whew. See, that all goes back to God.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't separate myself from God. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Sorry, not sorry. I had a different idea of what I thought this was before I knew God. I thought that we were all here to learn lessons, which we are. Because I was Buddhist, I was big into reincarnation and getting out of that belief. That was crazy for me because I've always believed that. And I felt like I knew that to my core until I found God, where I was just like, well, we get reincarnated. And, that's what we've been conditioned to believe is that we're all just one and we're all experiencing we're different. What do they say? We're spiritual beings
Beings in a
experiencing a physical. I'm butchering it, but
yeah, I
we
know
all
what
know
you
the
mean.
concept,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So at some point, I thought it goes back to a self-serving purpose almost. It's like you're here to learn lessons, and you're here to do this because of you, and you need
Mm,
to be better. And when I found God, He showed me that the purpose is for us to all just come back home to Him because He loves us so much. He created us out of love. Everything that we create, like if you think of the family as a unit, it's
mm-hmm.
an expression of our love. When someone comes together, when two come together, out of love, they create, they multiply, which is what God calls us to do. Everything that we have, we multiply out of love, right? Um, and so he did that with us. And so we do that. And, people and the human evolution is an extension of love,
Mm-hmm.
that we continue to do that. And because he loves us so much, he wants us to come back home with him. But the world is a dark place. This is a fallen place. Not to say that there isn't light here. There's so much light here because God created this place. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I think he calls us. For me, he calls us to let him transform us and show others how he can do the same for them,
Mm-hmm.
and to call us back home and to live in truth and light. And everything that we do is to serve the next people and generations to come,
Mm-hmm.
and just to know him. And again, just be called home to him at one point. At the
Yeah.
same time, we serve each other, because we're all one unit. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that concept makes sense, but it's something that he's revealed to me, and I'm trying to find a way that I can articulate that in the future as an
Mm-hmm.
idea. But I
Yeah.
think God is just so big and grand that his purpose and who he is, it can never be articulated fully and encapsulated into words, because then he wouldn't be the amazing God that he is. If our tiny little human minds could comprehend every single thing, he wouldn't be as amazing as he is. And I'm content with that.
I love it. What a great response. Thanks for that, Mel.
Thanks.
Where can people find you, and what are you working on next?
Oh yeah. So you can find me. I'm pretty active on Instagram at the moment. So it's Metanoia Mel, Metanoia, Metanoia Mel, Mel. Um, I'm mainly just active there. You can find me on TikTok, same username. In my long-term vision, I want to do a little bit more long-form content. So I'll be on YouTube soon enough. And it's funny that you asked me what the next step for me is, because yesterday God showed me a little bit something about coaching that I thought I had it all figured out on my own. Because I kind of decided I wanted to do coaching. That was my decision before God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's aligned with my bigger purpose, I think. But I coach creatives, visionaries, and artists, because I feel that artists and creatives have this very special gift of expression and influence. And sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry about that.
you're good.
um I think artists just have this special ability to have positive influence on the world. People are
Mm-hmm.
moved and influenced by art more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And because creators have this gift to share that, it's so important for them to be the best version of themselves, to put out the best art to impact people on a large scale. So that's why I specifically work with creatives. And I still want to stay in the realm of doing that. That is still my lane. I feel deeply aligned to doing that. However, God is telling me you need to do it on a larger scale than just one-on-one. So I'm trying to figure out how that looks for me. And I was sitting down with it yesterday, and um, I don't know what that's going to look like, but I look up to the people such as Erwin McManus and Dan Koe, and how they are their personal brand. And I think I've known that idea for so long. However, I think because of this idea that I've had that I need to just have a business and be a business owner, and I just coach people one on one, that's the way to serve people the best, which I still want to work with people one on one. But I think God is trying to get me to do something that I can impact people at the same time collectively, which is really scary because I'm not used to putting myself out there like that. It's kind of like a new concept for me. It's something that I've been working with. And I feel like God is like, stop hiding yourself, put yourself out there, because who you are um, influences people to be better, I think, I believe. I can see it, I'm an older sister, and even with my friends, I think when you make good decisions and this goes for anyone, when you make good decisions and you better yourself, you inspire other people to do the same thing. And so that's been my journey. And I think I just need to show people that it can be done. And I know myself more than anyone else knows me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can show people how I did it, I think that'll serve for larger impact. So I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. I don't know yet, but funny that you asked that because yesterday God was like, we need to sit down and look at the direction that we're going in because what you thought you wanted, I have more for you. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your life and your experiences, Mel. I think
Thanks for
there's a lot
having me.
of course, I think there's a lot of things that were spoken on this podcast that people could find value in and shed some light on some things. No pun intended. But thanks for hopping on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for sticking all the way through. If you enjoyed that piece of content right there, don't forget to like the video. Also, please subscribe to the channel. Comment below your favorite parts, or maybe if you have a question about what was discussed and talked about. Either way, I really appreciate you for being here. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.